Hello, friends. I'm no therapist, but I'm your host, Stephanie Goodman. I'm a wife, a mother, a grandmother, and a woman of faith. Often friends ask me how I have a successful marriage while blending families and staying optimistic in life. This podcast features people with real-life stories about success in relationships and triumph over trial. Have you ever lost a loved one? How about your own spouse? Today we are embracing a difficult subject, one that Kels and I have not personally experienced. Our guest, the lovely Stephanie Parrish, founder of the International Vitality Health Show on the Voice America Network, shares a personal story of the loss of her husband and the miracles from beyond the veil. Grab your tissues, it's a sweet one. Hello, friends. I am so excited to be able to introduce to you my new friend, Stephanie. No, I'm not talking about me, although I am talking about me. We share the same name, so it's very easy for me to remember. Her name is Stephanie Parrish, and she and I were introduced to a dear friend of ours, Doug Crockett, who has a program called Miracles When Heaven Touches Earth. Now, we were introduced through the LDS Film Festival that Kels and I used to run, and he brought his project to us, and we became dear friends, and it's been so amazing how that friendship has brought us into this new chapter of running our podcast. And he has introduced me to this wonderful angel, Stephanie Parrish, who is the host of the Health Vitality Show. Vitality Health Show. Who's the host of the Vitality Health Show, where they have a new live Zoom with a new guest every Thursday at 11 o'clock. So I highly recommend you check that out. And she will be introducing herself as well. But I'm excited to introduce Stephanie Parrish.
I am so happy to be here. Yay, Stephanie in the house. Here we are. Ooh, 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 ooh.
We've been teasing that this is the Steph and Steffi show.
What? Yeah, we have a lot of fun.
Definitely have been having a lot of fun together. So now we're gonna try and be our vulnerable selves to be able to tell our stories. First of all, I'm so grateful that I got to meet Stephanie. I was a guest on her Vitality Health Show.
Yes, twice, because she came back by popular demand. Everybody loved it. It was fantastic.
That is a humbling title, I have to tell you. I still have to embrace that. Back by popular demand.
Popular demand.
Yes. I always wanted to be popular.
Popular. Oh, that's probably.
Oh, right. Singing to Wicked. So we are excited to have her here in my home. She came all the way from Idaho, and I am just elated for the deliciousness that we're going to be diving into as we share a story.
Absolutely. We're excited because as we've been talking, there's lots of stories, right? So we're trying to narrow it down to which one do I share today?
What chapter are we going to focus on?
Which I'm so grateful for, because I am a firm believer that everything that happens in our lives is an opportunity for learning. Mm-hmm. No matter how hard it is, isn't it? We can have some really, really difficult learning opportunities, as well as really amazing learning opportunities. Mm-hmm. They're all amazing, but some are much harder opportunities than others. And as you have had, and as I have had, and I think that's we're going to narrow in on one of those today.
We certainly are.
So
now, Stephanie and I, we have something in common, and that is that we had previous relationships, and we've had new spouses. However, there is a subject that I am not familiar with that we don't have in common, and that is the death of a spouse. And I've asked Stephanie to be here in my home to share with us very vulnerably her experience with saying goodbye to a loved one. But there is a good side to this story, and I can't wait for you to hear that part. I don't want to ruin it. So, Stephanie, please share with us your story of your husband. What was his name?
His name was Ken. And as we were talking earlier, I have had the opportunity. My first marriage was 30 years and ended in divorce. It was very difficult. He was the father of my 6 children. And then had a rebound marriage, which I call a rebound because it was very fast, and it was the opportunity to, as he said, instead of proposing, he said, "Would you like to change your zip code?"
Oh, my.
Okay. It happened to be in Canada. So I did move very quickly to Canada.
Have a new adventure.
A new adventure of, shall we say, a lot of really difficult learning opportunities. It was very, very, very difficult. And it was life-changing for me. Had the opportunity to finally get out of that marriage and moved down to southern Utah, to St. George, and was divorced for about 6 years.
Okay.
And went through, as most of us do that are in the singles world. And I mean, you got to go through that, right? To be part of the singles world. And it was just to the point where I was like so tired of the singles world, tired of the online dating and all the singles activities. I just wanted to find my forever partner.
Yeah.
And I had really been doing a lot of praying and fasting about it and just saying, I just don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to be by myself. I don't want to get comfortable in being single.
That is a really good point.
That really made me nervous because a lot of the wonderful friends that I have been single for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
And I could feel myself getting comfortable in that being single. And I did not want that to happen to me.
Very interesting.
So that was kind of a change of course. So I did do a lot of fasting and praying, and I said, I just want to meet somebody normal, somebody the normal way, and somebody that can love me and cherish me and just be my best friend. And lo and behold, I own a hyperbaric oxygen clinic in St. George, and I had a gentleman come in that had been taking care of his father for 5 years as a caregiver. His father passed away at 102. 102. So in my mind, I'm like, yay, he's got longevity, right? His father died at 102. Everybody died quite old. I'm like, that's awesome. I get to marry somebody with a lot of longevity. Of course, I didn't know I was going to marry him then. But anyway, he had been asking his doctor. So in the course of taking care of his father, he had damaged his knees and his shoulder because he was the sole caregiver, lifting and taking care of. And he had damaged his knees and his shoulders. And they were talking about having to have knee replacements and shoulder replacements and all these things. And where I have a holistic health clinic, he was talking to his doctor about whether oxygen would help. Okay. And his doctor said, of course it would. So he goes, there are a couple places here in town. Check him out. So the next morning he got in his car, which never happens. He never turns the radio on. But he heard that little still small voice say, turn your radio on. Oh. And he turned his radio on, and it was my show, my radio show. That was playing on his radio.
Amazing.
Talking about what hyperbaric does for injuries and for all these different things, what extra oxygen does. And so he drove directly over to my office and got there before I even got back from the radio station. I was still recording. So when I got back, he was sitting there in the lobby, and he's like, help. Can you help? So we started working on, but he did about 20 sessions and started really noticing some differences. And as I was telling you before, I hug all my clients. I love to give my clients that personal touch. So and I had a lot of clients coming in every 20 minutes all day long. And I'd give him a hug, and then finally after about 20 sessions, he decided to do an additional 20, which is what most of my clients do. And our hugs started getting a little bit longer and a little bit longer. And I'm like, ooh, I can't date him. He's a client. That's unethical. I can't do that. So as soon as that was done, we started dating. And we'd only dated for a few months, and we were trying to decide what to do. Should we get married? Should we not get married? Should we tell our kids? Should we not tell our kids? And we had some friends there, and they're like, just elope. You don't have to answer to anybody. So we did. And so it was magical, and I'd gone through 2 really, really difficult marriages. And I didn't know what a good marriage was like. And I didn't know what having a partner that cared and adored me was like, and allowed me to care and adore for him
That's a big
That's huge
change.
because,
Yeah.
I'm one that has got so full of love and so full of attention, so full of affection. I want to give it.
Yeah.
And to not be allowed to give that in a relationship was really, really difficult. So when Ken came into my world and I was able to give him that love that I wanted to share, and he gave it back to me, it was crazy. We had 2.5 years of magic. It truly was magic. And he stepped right in. His degree was in marketing and communications. Stepped right into my clinic, helped me do that. He stepped in, he learned how to he was also an emotional healing coach.
Oh, wow.
Which was phenomenal. He could help people get rid of those traumas that were in their lives, and I could help them get well with the equipment that I was doing.
Wow.
So it was a heart, body, mind, soul, the whole thing. It was just such a great relationship.
What a companionship.
Absolutely. It was, and he was right there behind me helping with my radio shows and all my promotions I was doing and everything. It was fantastic. And then about a year ago, we had the opportunity. We were really drawn to move, which was crazy. It was crazy. And I had the opportunity. I was sitting there doing my radio show. I had some emotional healing coaches and counselors on there talking about child suicide. And it was right at the height of COVID. And there were so many kids committing suicide. Oh, yeah. And that was what the show was about.
Oh,
on my radio
was a
show.
Heavy show.
It was a really heavy show. And we're sitting there. Ken was over talking to them after we got done. And I literally heard the Spirit tell me, you need to take this show bigger. And I'm kind of looking around going, I need to take this show bigger. How do I get it out of St. George? It was just kind of one of those, did I really hear that? And so I was really pondering on it. And after Ken and I got in the car, I shared that to him, what I had heard.
Yeah.
And I said, how am I supposed to take this bigger? I don't know how I'm supposed to get it out of the St. George market. And so we did some fasting and praying that weekend. And Monday morning, I get to the office and I pull up my emails. And there is an email from Voice America Network. And they said they had been listening to my shows for the last few months.
Oh, my goodness.
And wanted to know if they could offer me a host position on their international platform.
Talk about taking it bigger. That was handed to you on a golden plate.
And I needed to have time to process it and be prepared for that. And I looked at Ken and I'm like, this is our answer. This is our answer.
Yeah.
But we had to fill out all this paperwork and it was just crazy. And I'm like, let's see if this will work, because it had to be run past the executive producers, and we had to come up with our first 13 shows, which was crazy being in this business. But I had been doing radio for 3 years at that point in time. Okay. I knew exactly who I wanted to have on there.
So it wasn't a brand new experience for you,
it
but
wasn't.
Still.
Just the platform.
Uh-huh.
And so they called back on Friday and said that the executive producers had looked at it, would love to have me be on the host on their international platform. So within 3 weeks, and it's on the internet, so I could do it from anywhere.
Wow.
And at the same time, I was toying with the thought of closing my business, because COVID was closing my business for me. And I know in retrospect, if that had not happened, there's no way I could have been pulled away from my business. I mean, There's no way. We were helping people every single day. We had miracles come out of that clinic. Every day. People that couldn't walk were walking. People that were going to lose limbs because of diabetes or whatever didn't lose their limbs. People that had cancers didn't have cancers. I mean, this is what I get to do every day. And so there was no way that I would have ever closed that business. But COVID had a different plan. So that's one of those COVID things that I'm grateful for, because it did end up closing my business. And we moved to Idaho. And my husband's like, I'm not going to Idaho. I'm from St. George. My family's all from St. George. I'm not leaving unless I get an absolute spiritual experience that I have to go. And I said, okay, because we have to go. We just knew where we were supposed to go.
Yeah.
There's a whole other story behind that. But we came up here, we came up to Idaho, and we were driving through a specific area, and both of us got chills from our head to our toes. And I looked at him, I'm like, do you feel that? And he's like, I feel that. And I'm like, this is where we're supposed to be.
Wow.
So after we went through that experience, we went home the next week and put my house up for sale, and it sold in 2 days, and we had moved in 2 months. So it shifted our whole world, but he was so amazing to just follow the Spirit and follow me and do what I needed to do, because he knew what I had plans and I had goals. And I have the opportunity. The Lord works through me a lot. I hear him a lot. And it's like, okay, just show me what to do. Tell me how to do it. And so we had the opportunity. It was funny because I sold my house, sold my business. I was doing the radio show every Thursday. And I knew I had to start a clinic up in southern Idaho where I was at. But I also knew I needed to just take some time. And so we spent from November to April just being together. And we would go for hikes or rides up the canyons or go to Logan or to Pocatello, wherever. We just spent time. And I kind of felt about this much guilty, but not very much. But I'm like, I get to spend time with my husband.
Little
How
tiny bit.
awesome is that? And I wasn't feeling really guilty at all, right?
Well, I think it's important that you had that time to be able to share together because you've gotten to know each other better and form that relationship, that friendship.
Oh, it was.
That you needed.
It was. And you know, if there's any of your listeners out there, videotape people. Talk to them, record.
Yes.
Because those have been absolutely priceless to me. Going back and just listening to him laugh and watching him laugh and us together. And we took that time. I took that time. And I am one that works 14, 15 hours a day, every day. I always have, because working, running a dance studio, doing all the businesses that I've been doing, but also taking care of my family because I've had a very, very ill husband with my first family, my first marriage, and then just crazy life with my second marriage.
Yeah.
And I haven't had the opportunity to just take time.
Just to be.
And I was so grateful for that time to just, and Ken would tell me every night, it's 7:00, Stephanie, it's Ken time.
I love that.
And it was like, I don't know how to do Ken time. I don't know how to do Stephanie time.
You're right. Yeah.
But he taught me at 7:00 at night, my phone went off, my computer went off, and I spent time with him.
How long did it take you to get to a comfort zone of embracing this new habit of Ken time, 7 p.m.?
It was really hard when you're running on full bore for so long and you know that you're the sole support. You have to do this. You know, and I'm like, oh, okay, I can shut my phone off. It was so hard to shut my phone off at 7:00 and 6:00 in the morning. I'd get back on and check and see everything I've missed, you know. And the other thing is, other people knew that they could get me at any time.
Oh.
They knew. We can call Stephanie at 11:00 at night. She'll answer her phone. We
Right.
can text her at 1:00. She'll get it.
Right.
Because I would.
Yeah.
So it probably took a good couple months, good 2 or 3 months, that Ken's like, it's Ken time.
Wow.
Let's just
I
shut
think of
everything off.
myself personally, because I am definitely addicted to my phone. To put my world away at 7:00, I can think of all the excuses why I need to have that phone on me. I've got kids. If they need to reach me, how are they going to get a hold of me, right? Yeah.
That's a really good excuse.
Yeah, but honestly, I mean, there's been some times that I end up crawling into bed 2:30, 3:00 in the morning because I've gotten stuck on the scroll, watching one stinking video after another.
Oh, that's horrible.
And you know, I feel more guilty than what I should at that point, but my sweet husband is so accepting, just happy to have me whenever I crawl into bed with him, and I'm so appreciative of that, because that's definitely a time that he could rip me open, and in part I would feel like I deserve it,
right?
Because I was neglecting my husband. But to have a 7:00 time that you are spending time with your best friend, I can see that would be so powerful.
Right. We'd moved to Idaho. We'd rented a home there for a few months. We bought a home in May. And like I said, it was so grateful because we got to spend so much time together. It was a choice that we made. We could have started doing everything before, but we just really made a conscious choice to just be together. And of course, we were snowed in. You couldn't do much anyway. So it was wonderful. But we did move into our house in May, and we worked really hard and got the whole house put together. I'm just crazy. Nobody gets their house put together in 2 months, right? We got all the shelving put up. We got all the boxes emptied. We had it all ready because we knew we were opening our clinic in our home.
Okay.
And in August, so we wanted to make sure that everything was ready, or by September was the plan. Anyway, by the end of August, he started getting sick. He'd gone to church, taught a Sunday school lesson, perfectly healthy.
Yeah.
He's a very, very healthy man. And came home that night and started feeling not very good. Started feeling sick. And I'm like, you never get sick. What are you doing? Oh. Anyway, within a couple of days, he was really sick. And then I got really sick. And I just had the flu, I'm sure that's what it was, if you can have the flu anymore.
Achy body, fever.
Yeah, just that stuff. And he got really sick, and we had a number of blessings given to him.
Okay.
And he just kept getting worse and worse. And it's like, what is going on? This isn't like him at all. And I was talking to all my doctor. I'm very lucky to be involved with a lot of world-renowned doctors. And I'm calling them all, asking them questions, and my pharmacists. And I'm like, what else can I do? And I was doing everything right. I own a hyperbaric chamber, and he was in that.
And
we
you've
had
seen
him on
miracles.
oxygen, and I see miracles every day.
Yes. Uh-huh.
And as he got sicker and sicker, I'm like, maybe I do need to take him to the hospital, but I was terrified to take him to the hospital.
Yeah.
And I had to have 2 men come over from my neighbors and help me carry him out to the car. That's how sick he was. And I was like, this is so weird for him. Anyway, miracles started happening. And it wasn't the miracles I was expecting at all. And I'm going to get emotional here. But the first miracle was when we got him to the hospital, his oxygen level was down to 73. And anything below 90 is deadly.
Yeah.
It was at 73. And they're like, oh,
he's suffering.
He's in big trouble. And so they didn't have a room for him in our hospital. They were all taken.
They were so full that there were no hospital
beds.
rooms.
So they took us into what's called the triage room, which is miracle 1, I feel, because the triage room, it was not part of the main hospital. Therefore, they let me go in with him. Otherwise, I couldn't have. Mm-hmm. So there, in the course of the 3 days we were there, a bed never came open. So I was able to stay with him the entire time. That one in itself is a miracle.
Absolutely.
That I was able to be with him. And as we were there, just trying to figure out what was going on, they tested him for everything, and they tested him for blood clots. He didn't have those. He was just going downhill. And as I was laying there with him, and we got to do a lot of just talking. He was very, very weak, so it was really hard to hear what he was saying. But at one point in time, I think we were there about 24 hours. He looks over at me and he goes, Steph, I'm the one that has to go to the other side. I'm like, excuse me?
Out of the blue.
And he's like, I just have things I need to do. I got to go to the other side. And I was just shocked. I'm like, no, we're supposed to do this together. You're not supposed to leave me. You can't leave me. What are you doing? And he's like, no, I just think that's what's supposed to happen. And so we talked a lot about it. And the doctors wanted to do all these different things on him. And they finally, on Sunday night, they got a bed open in Pocatello. And they're like, we're going to have to intubate you. We're going to have to put you in a coma. You're going to be in a coma for 4 to 6 weeks. You're going to have to do probably another 6 months of rehab afterwards if you live. And they're telling him all stuff. And luckily, he was alert and awake. And he just looked at the doctor and goes, no, you're not going to do that. And she goes, if we don't, you will die. Mm-hmm. And he looked at her, and very strongly, he said, if the Lord wants me to live, he will heal me. If he doesn't, he will take me. And I'm over there just bawling, trying to get my head wrapped around what's going on, because we knew that there was no way he would make it. And she goes, you just won't make it if you don't do this. And he goes, okay, it's in the Lord's hands. And just trying to make this decision, and I didn't have to make it. And I was so grateful that I didn't have to make that decision. He was very alert and very awake. And we had talked about it beforehand. And he had actually signed a letter before he went to the hospital saying, you will not do this, you will not do that. You will, exactly what he wanted. Wow. So it wasn't me. Yeah. And I was very grateful for that. And then, so that was another miracle, that I didn't have to make that decision. I was so grateful for that, and that I was able to be there with him. And I remember just sitting there putting oils on his body and rubbing his feet and washing his hair and giving him sponge baths, just whatever I could do to help him stay comfortable, mm-hmm. knowing he wasn't coming home. I can't. And then on Monday morning, they told us as soon as he took his oxygen mask off and everything off, he would live for about 45 minutes. That his heart would just stop. His heart had been so damaged from trying to keep the oxygen flowing. And he sat up and he says, Steph, I'm going home. I'm like, you're not going home yet. You can't. We were waiting for hospice to get there, which is crazy that I was even talking about hospice coming. We couldn't find a hospice that would come take care of him. That was because it was supposedly COVID,
right?
Pneumonia. So they were having a hard time getting hospice there. Anyway, they had told us that they'd be there by 8:30, and they weren't. And then they weren't by 9, by 9:30, 10, 10:30, 11. It's finally now getting to be about 2 o'clock. And he was just so done. He knew he was going to go. And we had this opportunity to just talk about so many things. That was another miracle. He was weak, but he could communicate with me. We just talked about our marriage and the miracles that happened and how we met and just being able to spend the time. And I just kept thinking how grateful I was that I took the time out of my crazy life to get to know this incredible man and spend time with him. And he had, like I said, he's an emotional healing coach, and he had spent, we were only there less than a year, and he influenced so many people. That was what was just, people come out of the woodwork saying he had done this for them or that for them, or he'd taught, he'd done quite a bit of coaching. And it's like, he'd done his coaching. I was just doing my show. Wasn't doing my hyperbaric, but he touched so many lives and helped so many people. And I knew that was happening, but I didn't realize how much it was happening.
Yeah.
Anyway, that morning, before he passed away, he sat up and he took all the oxygen, everything off. I'm like, put it back on. You're going to die. Don't do that. Hospice isn't here to help me. We're still in the hospital. But he had signed an NDR, so they weren't going to come and help with anything. And
what is an NDR?
An NDR is do not resuscitate.
Okay.
So once he goes, he'll go. And we were talking about, I said, Ken, I'm feeling spirits here. Who are you seeing here in this room? And he says, well, my mom and dad are right there, and your dad's standing right there. And I said, I can feel them. I couldn't see them, but he could see them. And I said, I can feel them. And he goes, yeah, they're here. And then he laid back down for a minute, and then he sat back up, and he turned his legs off the bed. And remember, he's been very, very weak, and just
two men
trying to hang on. 2 men just even get him to the hospital.
Yeah.
He sits up and takes everything off, and he sits up in the bed, and he's like using his great Sunday school teaching voice. And he goes, Steph, when I pass across the veil tonight, I'm going to have a lot of work to do on the other side. And he's just using this bold voice. And it just hit me what's really happening. And he said, when I cross to the other side, I'm going to have a lot of work to do. And I need to get this done. And he goes, and you have work to do on this side of the veil. And I'm going to be giving you some instructions. And he said, and I really need you to listen. And he always says everything so kindly. But he says, I really need you to listen. And I started laughing. And I said, are you saying I don't listen? And he started laughing. And that was another miracle. It was his full, true strength laugh, which I just loved his laugh.
Yummy.
And he looks at me in his laughing, and he says, Steph, sometimes you get distracted and sometimes you don't listen. And I'm just laughing because it's so me, right? We get busy, right? We got things to do. Anyway, it was just so funny. We're both just laughing. And he goes, will you listen to me? And I just realized what he was asking. And I said, I will do the best I can. I will listen. And he said, Steph, I love you. And he laid back and was gone in a few hours. Nobody gets that opportunity. I mean, it was such a miracle for me. And then after he'd passed, and I just sat there and was crying. And another miracle happened just before that, when he had taken his mask off and he was starting to slip into the unconsciousness. I had 3 friends sitting outside the window of the hospital. They were there to help me get him in the car to take him home when hospice showed up.
Yeah.
Hospice never showed up.
Oh my gosh.
And so I'd asked the nurse, they're appearing with their faces up against the window. And I asked the nurse, and I'm bawling. And I said, can my friends please come in with me? And she says, well, they all had COVID. And I said, yeah, they had. And she says, sorry, to hell with protocol. And she went and got him. And she brought him in. So I had my 3 really, really good friends with me in there. And I'm trying to think what else I want. There were so many miracles that happened there. That was one of the ones was the veil had parted and that room was full. And Ken's mother had been talking to the gentleman that gave my husband a priesthood blessing, and he stopped in the middle of it. And it's like, why did you stop? He was giving him the blessing to release his spirit. And he stopped for a minute. He's looking around, and I'm like, what are you doing? And then he finished the blessing and closed it, and he left and went out of the room. And Ken was unconscious at this point in time. And they told us that it'd be 35 to 40 minutes. And we're now 2.5, 3 hours waiting.
Yeah.
And he was really struggling. But he was unconscious. She says he's not feeling anything. And I'm like, honey, go. You've been released. It's okay. You can go. And I'm rubbing his arm and I'm rubbing his feet. And he's completely unconscious. And then he raised his right arm to the sky. And I'm like, it's your mom. Take her hand. It's your mom. You can go. And he held it up there, and then he set it back down. I'm like, why aren't you going? I didn't want him to go, but I'm like, why aren't you going? And then about 20 minutes later, well, it was probably about half an hour later, he did it again. And he raised his arm way up. And he was completely unconscious, but he raised his arm way up. And again, I'm like, sweetie, it's your mom. Take her hand. She's here to get you. You can go. And he put his hand back down. And then his monitors all started doing weird things. They kept flatlining, but we're watching him breathe. And my friend Alicia was there, and Alicia, and she goes, Stephanie, something's really wrong with these monitors. I can't read the monitors. So I walked around the bed to go see if I could figure out the monitors. And that's when Ken passed away. And it was like probably a blessing for me that I wasn't sitting right with him when he took his last breath.
Yeah.
I was busy doing these other things. Anyway, then Mike came back in after giving him the blessing, and it was a few minutes, and I was sobbing and having a really difficult time, but I'm also thinking about all the miracles that just happened within that 3 days. And when Mike came back in, he's like, Stephanie, I need to tell you what happened when I gave him that blessing. And I'm like, okay. And he said, I've never had the opportunity where the veil has parted when I have given a blessing. But he said the veil parted. And he said there was 8 or 10 people standing around Ken. And he said his mother looked at him and said, we can't take him yet. We're not all here. And Mike says that's never happened to him. Anyway, when he was out in the hall, of course, he didn't tell me this until after Ken had passed, but when he was out in the hall, he heard his mother say, we're all here now. We're taking him. And that was at the time he passed. And fast forward on that, I was really trying to figure out who are they waiting for? What, this was after the funeral. It was 2 days after the funeral. And I was just having a really, really hard night. And I was trying to understand, because everybody left, it was that quiet time after the storm. And was just sitting there trying to understand what had just happened to my life. And I was sitting there. And I felt Ken come into the room. It was kind of funny because I'm the one that bounces off the walls. I'm all over the place. And he's very, very calm. And I could feel him bouncing off the walls. I'm like, what are you doing? I knew his spirit was there with me. I'm like, what are you doing? And he's just bouncing off the walls. And I felt him say, just sit down.
I told you to
I sat down on the bed. And I felt his hand on my hand.
Oh.
And I just felt, I just need to calm here for a minute. And I looked up at the clock, and it was 7 o'clock. It was Ken time. And I just said, thank you. Thank you, sweetheart. Who are you waiting for? And I'm just having this conversation with him. I said, who are you waiting for? And I heard him tell me, Stephanie, it was Christ. Oh. Christ came to get me. He had such an incredible relationship with Christ. He knew Christ personally. And he said Christ had come to get him. And that's who they were waiting for. And I'm just like, okay. And then I heard him say, I love you. And I felt him squeeze my hand. And then he was gone. But I got my Ken time. Which I'm still not very good at, but I try to remember. Anyway, the experiences have just been, there's so much more I can go into, but those are kind of some of the highlights. And over the course of the last few months, sorry, we have to have more tissues. We do this a lot. Always keep them close. But over the course of the last few months since he's been gone, one of the other things we talked about in the hospital, which was so comforting to me, was the fact that he knew he was going to go. And he knew that we had talked about this over and over again. Whatever you do, don't leave me. Don't leave me. We've got to go through this together. We can't do this by myself. And he had said, Stephanie, when I go, I want you to get remarried. And he goes, not because you want to, or not because you have to, but because you want to. And through a friend of ours that was very in tune, she said, he's telling you, you're not listening. I'm like, this was about 3 months after he'd passed away.
Uh-huh.
She goes, so he's having to tell me to give you a message because you're not listening. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, if you'll take care of all these different things, then I can have time to listen, right? So she said, he wants me to tell you, because she's an empath. She's very, very aware that he loves you, but he wants you to remarry, and he wants you to he's going to help you find somebody.
How did that feel? Like, I mean, you had the most amazing 2 years with your best friend, and he's telling you, I'm going to set you up with someone else.
You're what? But he also knew that we were sealed for eternity, and he knew that I don't like being alone, and he knew what's coming, and he's like, I don't want you to be alone. And I'm like, I don't want to be alone. I don't want to go through the holidays alone. I don't want to go through what's trials that are coming. I just don't want to do this by myself.
Yeah.
And Ken and I it was so great because we had spent a lot of time preparing for whatever's coming, and I'm just like, I need somebody that's on the same page as me. I need somebody that believes the same things that I believe. I need somebody that understands what Ken and I had put forth and started. I need somebody that understands and can have a passion for what I do with my show, and have a passion for what I do with my business, and can see what I do and can step into my crazy, because my life is crazy.
Yeah.
And there's very few people that are willing to step into my crazy world. There's a lot of that are willing, but none that, I'm like, you don't really know what you're saying when you want to step into my world, And so I've really been, and I just did not want to go online. I just didn't want to go online. I didn't want to do the singles. I kept saying, I don't want to do the single thing again. I don't want to do this again.
Especially because you had 6 years before that.
I did. I wasn't supposed to have to do this again.
Oh,
no, and burying a husband is so different from divorcing a husband. When you're divorcing a husband, you try to figure out how to be amicable. You try to figure out how to make, the relationship work. But you lose a husband, you lose your best friend, you lose your support, you lose your everything, And I was so grateful because I could feel him, and I can feel him a lot. And I feel that he gets frustrated that I don't listen sometimes. But he also knows that he knows how to get through me. And it's usually through somebody else. But I just really felt like he was helping me, and when I decided, okay, I'll just get online. I don't want to do this. But I did. And this gentleman popped up, and he's like, hey, how you doing? I'm leaving for a few weeks to go back with my family for Thanksgiving, but I'll talk to you later. I'm like, oh, okay, great, bye. Right. And, so there was a number of
all
other
the
people.
many messages online.
Yeah, all these messages. Yeah. And I was on a couple different sites, and just these different messages coming in. And, everybody wanted me to move to where they were. I was proposed to 6 times in the first week. I'm like, maybe you should meet me.
Wait, stop.
Probably a good idea. I know.
Proposed to 6 times
in 1 week.
And never met the person.
Never met. Well, I shouldn't say 5 of them I had not met, but the one I had. It was funny because all the guys I was dating before I'd married Ken a lot of them were coming back into the picture.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And so they're like, "Oh, I can marry you now."
Let's get married.
Well, I didn't marry you before, but okay, probably not. Anyway, it was just kind of funny, and I'm like, I just don't want to do this. I just don't want to do this.
The dating game can be so treacherous.
Was, and there was a few I'd gone out with, and I'm like, that's just not what I want. Anyway, so a month or so ago, I got back online, and just I was terrible at being online this time. I'm like, I just didn't even hardly get on ever because I don't want to do this. Anyway, I got on, and this wonderful man that had messaged me before Thanksgiving, and I thought, well, I haven't heard from him. It's after this almost Christmas. He should be back. So I just texted him, and I said, hey, how's your trip? Anyway, I was talking to about 6 or 7 other guys at the time because that's what you do online, right?
Did you have notes?
I had
this person has this many kids, lives in this.
my friend kept trying. She says, I need pictures and I need a board.
Oh, your friend took pictures. Yes.
It was so funny.
It's a profession.
It is a profession. If you want to get anywhere with it, you've got to stay on top of it, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, so my friend and my cousin, she's like, now who are you talking to? Oh, this guy's not coming. So there was like 4 guys that said they were going to come spend Christmas with me. And one would drop off and the other one would say, I'm going to come. And that would drop off. And another one, I'm going to come. That would drop off. I'm like, okay, what's going on here?
Like,
it was just.
It wasn't that they were standing you up. Just different things happened.
Just different things happened. Yeah. They just didn't come for whatever reason, and they changed their plans. And then one of my best friends in Arizona said, I don't want you to be alone, so I'm going to come spend Christmas with you. And then she called and was like, oh, I can't come. I'm like, what is going on here? I had 6 opportunities to spend Christmas and now none.
Wow.
It was just funny. And anyway, so I'd reached out to this friend and we started talking, and he's like, can I call you? So we started calling, and we called every day, and he's like, you can call me anytime. He's retired. And I'm like, oh, he has no idea. He has no idea. But as we got talking and we talk, I'm like, oh my gosh, this guy is really awesome. And then we were talking one night and he said something, and it was Ken's words. And as I was talking to him, I went he's like, are you okay? I'm like, oh yeah, I'm fine. And I had to process it because it was the words Ken would use. I'm like, that was a gift. That was another miracle. Like, he had a hand in finding John for me. And I knew that. And it was just, there was a couple other things that he's done. And then John and I were talking, and he was planning, he finally came over. It was funny because he was going to come over after Christmas. And then he's like, I can't wait. So he came over before Christmas and spent a few days with me. And I invited him to go to a concert with me that my friend Alicia was doing. And he's like, I'll go to the concert with you if you'll come to Montana with me to meet my kids for Christmas.
Oh my.
And it's kind of funny because, just a little sideline here, when I was in Canada, I got PTSD really bad because I got left a lot, and I didn't have my own car, and I didn't have a phone that would work in Canada, and my significant other would think it was funny to just leave me sometimes, just abandon me sometimes.
And so I was you at home,
at restaurants or at the movie or
just
at
up
different places. And he kind of thought it was funny to see if I could figure out how to get home. It was just weird. It was weird. And I came off with, when I got back to the States, I'm like, I swear I will never go in anybody else's car without my own money, my own car, my own keys, and I will never be abandoned again. You know, so for John to ask me to go to Montana with him, I'm like, that means that's in your car with no car of my own and no keys or no way to get back. You know, I mean, it was a thing I had to really go through. But then I felt this peace come over me going, you're going to be okay. He's a good man. You're in good hands. You're going to be fine. And, you know, when I prayed about it, I just felt this very peaceful feeling, because I thought, I will never date somebody else or marry somebody else that I haven't spent a lot of time with.
Right. I understand that.
A lot of time with. And you and I have talked about this. I'm
yes, we have.
The best way to get to know somebody is go on a road trip in the car with them and spend some time.
I mean, you see those kids that get married and their first like family trip is their honeymoon. Talk about stress.
Twice.
Yeah.
Not a good idea. No, it's like, ooh, ew, yuck. No, I didn't know that. It was terrible.
You do that in that way?
No. No. And then you're sitting there going, what did I just do?
Yeah, so there are those moments too.
Yeah, that's a whole nother show.
Yes. It definitely
However, with John, it was never that way. It was so comfortable. We had so much fun, and we just talked really deeply about our lives. And then we laughed our heads off because he's so funny, very sarcastic, but very funny. And we just had such a great time. And it was funny. We'd only known each other really a couple weeks, maybe a week. And he's like, well, it wasn't even that long. He's like, is it okay if I tell you I love you? Because I think I love you. I'm like, you're asking me? Yes, you can tell me. Because I'm like, oh, do I tell him? Do I tell him? Do I tell him?
We were feeling it yourself.
We were so totally. We were feeling it when we were talking on the phone because we were on the same page with everything. He would say something. I'm like, you know that? And I would say something, and he's like, you know that? I mean, it was so incredible, you know. And of course, the main thing for me is somebody that really knows God, and he knows God so much. And I know that Ken is up there with God and with Christ, and they're maneuvering. Yeah. And I have no doubt that they maneuvered John right into my life. And so we decided to elope. So Monday we eloped.
Like, we're talking this. How many days have you been married now?
4. I guess.
And you know what? We are so lucky and privileged to actually have John in our, I was going to say studio, in our living room. John in the house. Woo, woo. Woo, woo. We'll have to have him give her a kiss, I think, because I'm old-fashioned romance like that.
Anyway, so, you know, my book is called, that I'm working on, is called Tragedy to Triumph.
Oh,
because we had both gone through, and this was based on Ken, and then Love to Loss. And because we both had such tragic situations that we triumphed over, and then we finally found that love, and then it was gone, and we lost it. So now there's going to be another chapter, whole nother book.
Those chapters, I tell you.
I know, they just, you know, it's going to be so massively thick, I'm going to have to break it up into a number of them, but so grateful for miracles. You know, this is what my show is all about, is hope, healing, and miracles. Yeah. And the healing isn't just physical healing. It's spiritual, emotional, mental, physical, whatever it is. There's always got to be hope. And if you don't have that hope, what do you have? And there's so much going on out in the world right now. You've just got to have hope that those miracles are going to happen. And you've got to learn to look for those miracles.
Oh, that's really profound.
They're there.
And how do you look for those miracles, Steph?
You know, you really have to stop and analyze, what was that all about? Because I look back on my life, and I've had an amazing, incredible life with a lot of tragedy in my life, a lot of really, really difficult situations. Yeah. And I'm so grateful for them.
Amazing to hear that, isn't it?
I wouldn't be who I am today. I would not be who I am or where I am today. And I feel even with my Ken, that 2.5 years of magic, real magic, taught me what it was like to have a good marriage and have a man that loved me and that I could love back. And when John came into my life, it was like, oh my goodness, I know how to do this now. And I recognized that so does he, you know, and it's been a miracle for us. And had we not gone through the situations that we've gone through and the learning experiences, I wouldn't have known that.
Stephanie, this has been an incredible story, and I really appreciate you sharing your heart and the miracles, and I love that you really embrace hope. You're teaching us to have hope. And I want to ask you a question, knowing how I would feel in that circumstances, and I haven't lived it, so I don't know what that's like. I'm no therapist, but I do want to know what. Well, thank you. I do want to know, what is it like for John to know that you have this compassion for Ken, this love that came into your life, and now you have John in your life. How does that work? And
you know, I'm so grateful you asked that question. It is so important because, like I said, we had so many things in common. And me being divorced twice, which I never thought I'd be divorced once, let alone twice.
Yeah. We don't get married to get divorced.
We don't know. That was just like we were talking, right? That was not the plan. And when John and I were talking, and he had been married once before and divorced, and then he had remarried and had a beautiful marriage like I did. And he had her for 21 years. And she just passed away this year as well. And her funeral was in May. There's a whole nother story behind that too, but she just passed away also. And we were able to understand and relate, because it really is a different story from being divorced and losing a spouse. Yeah. And he's got a really difficult story to tell too about that. and someday that may come out. But they had his wife's funeral in May, and mine was in August, and we were just both very ready to take the next step. And he tells me in October, he had felt very strongly that he didn't want to be alone, that he needed to find a companion, and he needed to be in the mountains by a lake.
Oh my word.
And he was thinking maybe going to Montana. And so as soon as he came, I'm like, I have mountains and I have a lake. And so when he came over, he's like, this is where I'm supposed to be.
Wow.
And it was just I think it would be hard on somebody going, because I'm very public. I talk my story. I'm writing my book. I'm doing these things. But if he hadn't experienced it, it would be very difficult for him. But he has been so, and it probably still is, and I try to be very sensitive to that.
Yeah.
But I found an incredible man that went through similar experiences to me, having the love of his life taken, like I had the love of my life taken.
Yeah.
And both feeling very, very strongly that there was somebody out there for us, and that we didn't want to do this alone, and that we're willing to support each other, whatever that looks like, whatever we're going to do. And luckily he spent a few days with me and saw what my life was like. Yeah. But I also got to spend 10 days with him, with his family, and in his world. And I'm so grateful for that, because everybody we talk to loves John. He's got so many friends and so many people that just adore him and love him, and his kids and his grandkids. And I'm like, it was so beautiful to be able to spend that time. So he spent some time in my world. Yeah. I spent some time in his world. And we're like, this is right. It's just right. We felt so blessed about it. And he's like, well, would you want to marry me? I'm like, well, yeah. Okay, well, let's call somebody, see if we can get it done. Okay, well, let's do it. So 4 days later, we were married.
Wait a minute. Holy cow.
Yeah.
I want to bring this up because Kels and I kind of went through this, and we talked a little bit about it where, when I divorced, I decided that I was not going to get married for at least 18 months of dating someone, because I wanted to know exactly who they were.
Right.
I wanted to know all of the ins, the outs, the secrets.
Yeah.
I wanted to know the secrets. I wanted to know that what I was enveloping myself in was going to be a good relationship, a good marriage.
Right.
So 18 months was the sticking date for me.
Do you know how long I dated? With that time frame, right?
Exactly.
We talked about
they
that.
do, right?
18 months, huh?
18 months, yeah. But I was married in 3 months.
Yeah.
So, and we'll go into that in another session of how Kels changed all of my rules of what I had set aside for myself. But Ken was gone for how long before John came into your life? He had died in
August. He died on his birthday, on August 30th.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, which was crazy.
I mean, hard for you here on the earth, but what a celebration for him.
I know. I'm like, no wonder there was so many people over there. They had a party for him. His birthday.
First heavenly party. How lucky is that?
And I know that there was myriads of angels, and there still is. At his funeral, I have friends that see and feel spirits a lot, and I was told, and I could feel that chapel was full. And it wasn't full of people, it was full of spirits.
Oh.
And it was an amazing experience.
There's no doubt that there is life after this world.
Right. And when John had a celebration of life for his wife, same thing. There was just so many people there that were people and spirits that were there. And it's kind of funny, because I'm like, I wonder if his wife and my husband have been up there chatting and talking, because I know Ken had a hand in this.
Yeah.
And it's very possible that his wife did too, because she loved him so much, and he loved her, just like I loved Ken and Ken loves me. They want us to be happy.
Yeah.
They want us to not go through this life alone.
Oh,
they want us to be on the same page, and we're so on the same page of so many things. I'm sure that maybe down the road we'll find some things that are going, like mustard. He put mustard on my sandwich. Not a good idea. I don't like mustard. But he now knows. He's like, what? That's the first thing I found. Anyway, it was just kind of funny. So, but I really, really feel that our spouses that have passed on, because we did have that incredible love for each other as he did with his wife. He was so tender with her, just the stories that I hear, and she just adored him. And when you've had that experience and then they're gone, it's a whole different world when you're looking for somebody to share that with again, as opposed to the anger and frustration that comes a lot with divorce.
Is there a comparison?
There was no comparison for me at all. It was just more of a confirmation than a comparison.
Comparison, confirmation.
Yeah. Once I felt like this was the direction I was supposed to go.
Yeah.
And there's no comparison with him because they're completely different people. But to feel that love from John that I felt, that I'm like, oh, this can still happen. It's here. And it's different, but it's here, and it's every bit as beautiful and every bit as magical.
I love that you said that loving Ken opened your heart to receive John into your life and allow you to be loved.
Absolutely. It was like, and I was worried. I've always said, I've held Ken at such a, he's on this pedestal, and he set the bar so high, and I'm like, oh, John's right there. Oh, wow, this is pretty cool. And I was so grateful, again, a miracle, that I got that confirmation that was okay. And we have heard so many people have so many opinions. And I learned a long time ago to tell people, thank you for your opinion. I have my own. I don't need yours. But thank you.
That is so powerful. Can I pause on a moment on that?
Yes, absolutely.
When you are situated in a space that people are giving you advice that you can feel is not the advice for you. Right. Thank you for your opinion.
I have my own.
I have my own.
But thank you.
Yeah.
And that was very powerful for me to learn that. And that was going through the midst of all the crazy in my life. And, when people, with Ken too, but with John specifically, because we've only known each other since just before Thanksgiving. And that wasn't even seeing each other. So we actually saw each other in person on the 20th of December. And as soon as he walked in, though, before he walked in, because we had talked so much and just talked about so many things that were just very deep in my heart, that were very deep in his heart. And just to be able to have that communication, and both of us were just kind of really blown away. It was almost like he was tailor-made for me. Oh. And I was so grateful for him. And I'm like, oh, this is really happening. This is so beautiful. And then he asked me to go with him to Montana. I'm like, yes, I will. I will, because I'm going to know you really well by the end of this trip, right? And it was magical. It was magical. There wasn't anything. And I guess I was grateful that I was open to that. Yeah. I just didn't want to, as Ken said, don't have to. I want you to marry because you want to. I'm like, I don't have to get married. I'm very, very powerful and resilient on my own. Yeah. But I didn't want to have to do this on my own. I want to and John allows me to be my person, and he's just there to be supportive. And same with him. He lets me be supportive for what he wants to do and what he needs to make decisions. There's decisions that have to be made. And it's just been such a beautiful relationship. And I just want to tell people out there that are listening, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Listen. What is God telling you? What is your heart telling you? Nobody else's opinions matter except yours and God's. That's all that matters. And find that, and don't be afraid of it, because you'll figure it out. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to, John always says, 30 years together. So we'll see. That would be awesome. Oh. But he's fantastic, and I'm so blessed to have him in my life. So yeah, we met in person on the 20th and got married on the 3rd of January. We did make the decision, both of us, where we both lost our spouses in 2021, that we wanted to wait till 2022.
I knew you
in
us. 2022.
Yeah, absolutely, for both of us. Huh. So we got married on the 3rd, on Monday, first Monday of the year.
I love it. Stephanie, it has been so incredible to have you in my home. I knew that it was going to be delicious, but I had no idea the kind of dessert that was coming from this conversation. Thank you for opening your heart.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for sharing those sacred stories and being able to be a voice of comfort and hope and healing.
I know there's a lot of people out there hurting so much. And my goal is just to help people understand, to have hope, and make sure you're looking for those miracles.
If you want to get in touch with this amazing woman, Stephanie, please tell us how we can reach out to you.
I would love you to send me an email. I love to get emails, and that is contact@myvitalityhealthsolutions.com. myvitalityhealthsolutions.com. Or you can call me. I'd love to visit with you. I get calls all the time, and I would love to visit with you. And if I can help in any way, I would love to do that. And that is 435-680-3053. 435-680-3053. Please call me. Let me help you. Let me talk to you. I'd love to hear your story.
Thank you so much. If you've enjoyed this episode, remember to subscribe, share, like us on Facebook, and follow us on Instagram. Please comment because I would love to hear about what you think and what you want to see in the future. I'm no therapist, but I am your host, Stephanie Goodman.